Hi, everybody. Here's a quick look at Twitter. We're just going to go through a few things and a few of the screens and some of the things and functions that you can do. We're starting off on the your profile page, which is done with the person button. When you open Twitter, it doesn't start there. It usually starts on the home screen. Like on Facebook, this is basically everybody you follow or that you're friends with, and it has all of their tweets. Just like Facebook, it has an algorithm to sort of tell you what it thinks you want to see. But the thing I like about Twitter is you can put latest tweets, so you can just look at what are people saying in real time. And that can be really useful, especially when you're trying to follow a breaking news event. And actually, Twitter is one of the best spaces to do that. So that's one of the reasons why I want you to use this platform. The speed on Twitter is the fastest of just about any medium out there, which means things happen very quickly, but also things disappear pretty quickly. So if you put a tweet up and you don't see much action on it in a couple of hours, you probably need to rethink what you're doing, because it's not often that you have a tweet that's sitting out there and then it resurrects and gains new life. So something to think about as you're developing, using Twitter as a platform to connect with other people and build your brand. You want to learn to use Twitter in a professional context, because even though there are personal accounts, there are tons of branded accounts like Drury's. And if you are put in charge of such an account, what you have to do is adopt the brand voice, not your own personal voice. If I'm running the Drury account, it shouldn't sound like Jonathan Groves. It should sound like Drury University. So that's one thing that you have to think about as you are, if you're put into a role of being a social media manager or managing a Twitter account. A lot of people use Twitter as a news feed, so they basically follow some primary news accounts so they can track headlines and see what they're doing. And a lot of people don't ever tweet, they just use it to listen. So that's okay if you want to consider doing that. I want to encourage you to build your brand by putting yourself out there and say some things that are insightful, maybe share some articles that might be useful to your potential audience. So my audience that I look at, so you may use Twitter like for jokes and for connecting with your friends, and that's a perfectly fine use of Twitter. But as a professional tool, if you want to use it, you want to think about, what network am I going to build? So my network is really built around journalists and media scholars and media professors and media organizations. So that's kind of my brand. So I keep it fairly professional on Twitter. Don't do a lot of personal stuff, although occasionally I'll put some personal information on there. So something to think about. The hashtag shows you the trending topics on Twitter, so you can kind of see what people are talking about. Sometimes the trending topics are very goofy. One thing to keep in mind is trending topics can be driven by bots. There are a lot of bots on Twitter, so you want to be careful about responding immediately to someone who's being inflammatory, because A, it might be a hacked account. B, it might be someone who is, like I said, it's a bot, or it's someone who is posing as someone else to inflame people. So you'll notice on my Twitter, what I've done is on Chrome, I've installed an add-on called Bot Sentinel. And basically what it does is it says, what is the likelihood that this account is a bot? So you'll see normal. That means they have a normal functionality in terms of behavior. So there are identified bot behaviors, like somebody who retweets a lot of stuff might be seen as a bot, so they might say suspicious. So the higher that percentage is, the more suspicious the account is. I'm going to show you a little tool that might be helpful for the whole bot discussion. There's a site called the Alliance for Securing Democracy that's put out by the German Marshall Fund, which is a place for improving foreign relations. And they put out a dashboard that tracks suspicious accounts and looks at what are these accounts amplifying. So you may get accounts that are trying to push a trending topic on Twitter. So they may be retweeting it a lot. They may be liking it a lot. They may be sharing the same tweet on different accounts so that they make things that are talked about, right? And so they look at it by a variety of countries and look at these accounts. And then what they do is they look at various topics too and look at key phrases. So it might be useful on occasion to check this dashboard and see if there is a trending topic that you're interested in and see if it's being amplified in some way by some of these accounts. And that's just a helpful way for kind of digging through to make sure, am I just getting mad about something, or is that truly a trending topic that everyone is talking about? And you're probably saying, Groves, gosh, that's a lot of work to have to worry about. Well, Twitter is one of the ones that, I mean, and it happens on Facebook too. In any of these social spaces, there are a lot of bad actors that are manipulating how we react. So you want to be aware of that when you're operating in these spaces. There are bad actors in every social medium. And Twitter is a little more susceptible than Facebook because it is an open network. So it's really easy to follow and unfollow anyone, and it's really easy to create accounts. Facebook, it's also easy to create accounts and do that, but there's a little more of a barrier because people have to accept you as a friend. Something to keep in mind with Twitter too is that it is one of the fastest of the social media platforms. So stuff on Twitter happens very quickly, and you can have stuff that goes viral very quickly, and you can also, your tweet, if it doesn't take hold immediately, it may not take hold ever, because it's not the kind of thing where your content lingers out there for a while. I usually give a tweet a day to see what kind of reaction I get, and that's pretty much going to tell me what kind of response I'm going to get overall. Twitter does have some built-in analytics, so you can look at how your tweets and followers and that kind of information, how that's been doing over the past 28 days. You can also look at the past week if you want, and then you can also see how people are interacting with your tweets, and you can see what your most active tweet was, and that can help inform what kind of content you want to create in the future. That's really important for branded accounts. It's not necessarily as important for individual accounts. I don't look at my analytics all that much because I mainly, I can kind of get a gauge that, oh, here's a tweet that was retweeted 21 times and got 27 likes. So that was I suspected that was a pretty, I kind of got that people engaged with that. Okay, so we have our home news feed, which is everybody that you follow, and you'll see their tweets, and you can either organize that by the algorithm, or you can do the latest tweets. So I'm doing the latest tweets rather than the top tweets so that I can kind of see what's happening in real time. The hashtag tells us our trending topics. Notifications is basically when people mention you or they respond to you. When you want to answer somebody, so like say I wanted to answer him, the comment, that ends up being a reply. You can also put the name of the person at the beginning of the tweet, and what that does is that's a response to them. And the way that works is, imagine that you are responding to somebody in an open room. So it's basically like I would be conversing with them, and everybody who's in that room, which is everybody who follows either one of us, can see our conversation. And then anybody who goes to my profile page can see who I've been responding to as well. So it's a conversation out loud. If you want a private conversation, you're going to use your DMs, your direct messages. Don't think of this as email, even though it has the little thing there, because my rule of thumb is I use this if I don't want to necessarily broadcast it, but I'm not going to talk about anything in there that I wouldn't want to go public. So my assumption is this is going to be a private conversation, but not necessarily a confidential conversation. Bookmarks work a little bit like likes because you can find your likes on your profile. So I can see every tweet that I've liked here and it will pop up. So some people use this not for likes, but as a bookmarking tool. But there's also a bookmark function where you can save tweets. The thing you have to be careful of is don't click on those three buttons because you can clear out all your bookmarks. And I use this really as to save cool examples and that kind of thing. Twitter also has a function that's really buried, and I think they're wanting to get rid of it, called Moments. And you can find that as a way to save a bunch of tweets and put them together. But it's a function that appears to me like they're going to get rid of it because it doesn't appear on the main menu here, and it's very difficult to find on the mobile app too. Lists are ways that you can organize. So you can put people on lists that you don't necessarily follow. And that can make it a little bit easier so you don't have the fire hose of your main feed. Like I follow over 1,000 people, so that's a lot to take in, and it can just feel overwhelming, especially as newsy as things have been ever since, the pandemic hit. So what you can do is sort of subdivide everybody into these lists. So like I've got a media list, and this is has 39 people of top media people. So I can just look at this list to hear what the conversation is about media. And then you can share these lists. So there's a guy I follow who created a list of COVID experts, and it's got 600 COVID experts. And so I can see what epidemiologists are saying and that kind of thing. So another useful tool for navigating the fire hose because it can get kind of complicated. Okay, we talked about the profile page, which is all about us. We can see not only my tweets, we can see my tweets and replies, and then any media that I may have uploaded, like pictures or screenshots. Don't be afraid. I use a lot of screenshots on my Twitter feed, and that can be, they're really easy to do on your phone. They're a little bit more difficult to do on your desktop. And then this is all your settings. There's your moments, so it's a little bit buried. So you can use that almost like a stories function to save a bunch of tweets. If you're tracking a trend, that may be something that's useful to do. And then here's where your analytics is, and this is how you can change your display. So I can do, yours is probably defaulted to white. You can do, I prefer the darker. It's just easier on my eyes, so I tend to go with that. Okay, so creating a tweet. So here's where the action is. Two things you can do. There are tweets and then there are threads. Okay, so say I wanted to tell, I'm just going to tell one tweet and say, this was a great day. Okay, now a tweet can be up to 280 characters long. This tells you how many characters that you've used and how close you are to being done. You can add pictures. You can tap into Giphy to put some GIFs just like you would on your phone. So I'm going to put cool. So I'll do that one. So now I've got my animated GIF. And then I could tweet that if I wanted to. Now, if I wanted to add to this and tell people why it was a great day, right? So then I hit this to create a thread. And what that does is it puts these tweets together and connects them. And that helps people out because what you start to do is start to see the power of Twitter is through conversations that are driven by stories. So you don't think of tweets in isolation. You think about how I can tell a story. This is really good for a couple of things. If you're live tweeting an event, it's good to thread your tweets and put them all together so people see, oh, I can see this ongoing story. The other thing I've seen people do is this is a way to keep your tweets alive over the long term. And I'm going to show you somebody that I've seen that has done this to kind of track what things are going on with the pandemic. So here's a professor that I've become friends with over Twitter because she's she and I are both very interested in podcasts. And so we've connected on Twitter, had some Twitter conversations, and she posts a lot of really useful information on her Twitter feed. So she's in Egypt at American University. And one of the things that she does, so every day she posts how many new cases there are, total cases, and number of deaths in Egypt. So she's been tracking it. And if you go, what she does is she doesn't just create a new tweet out of whole cloth, she connects it to the previous tweet up here to continue the thread. And so if you go back, she did this, towards the beginning of the pandemic. So this goes back to June 15th. So you get an idea of like, oh, okay, so this can keep this tweet alive because whenever she tweets this, you see the entire thread. So that can be really helpful for you to think about. Now, let's say I wanted that whole thread. It's kind of hard to read on Twitter, and maybe I wanted it more in a blog format. There's actually this app that will create a blog post out of it for you. It's called Thread Reader app, and you use it and hit unroll, and it will send you a link to the unrolled the thread that's presented more as a blog post on its platform. I'm not going to do it for this one, but I just wanted to show you that. And the way you do it is you respond to the thread this way with an Thread Reader app, unroll, and then bingo, all of a sudden you've got a blog post that is the unrolled tweets. So that's all that, so you got pictures you can put in there. You can put links in here, and what it will do when you put a link in, it will actually, let me show you. So like that's a tweet. So I put a link to this article, and so when I put that link in, it creates a little social card. So it has a little picture, a little blurb, and then this is a link to the actual article. And again, what you're doing in this space is trying to provide value. You're trying to give people useful information, tell them things that they didn't know. You're trying to show, hey, I actually know what I'm talking about, and here's some valid information. Now, some people do it like through jokes, so they're telling funny jokes, and some comedians have made their careers, starting their careers or enhancing their careers through doing Twitter. That's fine too. But don't forget that one way that you can build your brand is by being a curator, by sharing useful information that's helpful to people. You can also put emojis in your tweet if you want to, and that's kind of fun. And then there are polls. Now, I'm reluctant to show everybody these because you do a poll and you're like, hey, look at what my followers said. But that is not a scientific poll. And so really Twitter polls are for fun. They have very little meaning because it's not a valid sample. So just remember that if you're in your professional life and people are like, oh, what did the Twitter poll say? Don't let your bosses suck you into that conversation because that is BS. Online polls that don't have a valid sample are not useful, and actually they can be misleading because, like if I were to post this, I have a very limited set. I have a very media focused group. And for me to say, oh, here's what the American public thinks when it's my followers don't represent the American public. That's like a terrible way to use a poll, but it can be fun. So I just show you that, and you can add your poll there. So that's kind of a fun thing that you can do. So that kind of gives you just a very brief overview of things you can do on Twitter. So what I would encourage you to do, get on here, look for some usual suspects, right? So you may want to follow some of your favorite news sources. I would encourage you to add some variety to your news diet. So if you're someone who has CNN on your followership, why don't you add MSNBC and Fox News? If you are someone who, you want to make sure you got a wide media diet, I would consider institutional accounts and journalists themselves. Some journalists are really interesting to follow and say things in their Twitter accounts that don't necessarily appear in their reports. So that's something else that you may want to think about. Also look for people on the ground that are really useful, that are active. because they can be providing information. One of my favorite accounts is the Springfield Greene County Health Department. They've been really useful for figuring out what's going on with local COVID information because they update it every single day. So that's something that I would encourage you to do. So that's a quick overview of Twitter. If you have any questions, let me know. And the main thing is to get in there and use it. Don't just put it on your phone and then disappear. Experiment with it, try it, and then just keep in mind that everything you do on there is out there unless you lock down your account. I would encourage you not to lock down your account and just be very, very careful about what you tweet because that's how people use Twitter. Not that many people I mean, some people lock down their accounts, but that's really not the best use and not the most professional use of Twitter. So, okay, well, good luck and have fun with it, play around with it, and let me know if you have any questions.